I have the first guest coming. No, 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 no. So excited. Uh, I'm adding my favorite astronomers to the space and all the things. I'm so excited. And extraterrestrials. So excited. Uh, okay, the invitation has been sent. Let's wait for our wonderful guest to join us. Wednesday Wisdoms 2024 guest edition. Episode number 1 of 2024. Wow. So excited. Try again. Got it. Accept. I've added you. Go live together. Let's do it. I've done the thing. Yes. Let's go live together. Happy New Year, 10. Accepted. Please, Instagram, be nice to me. I said go live. View. Go live. Oh, it says you're still not able to join. Please, Instagram, be good. Yes!
Okay. 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 So it's well.
Hey.
All right. Let's see.
So now we're on a phone.
Nice to see you guys.
Excellent.
Likewise.
From our flight buddies to Wednesday Wisdoms. I've been so excited about this for ages. How's your conference going?
Going well. Just starting this morning, but now we get to do this. All of us radio astronomers, many of us radio astronomers, get together in Boulder every year to talk about future technology and current experiments. And so Wael and I are here to learn and to share what we're doing with the conference, and as well as today with you.
Oh, I'm so excited. Well, first of all, before we get stuck into telling everyone about cool life of astronomers and, jet setting, let's introduce you. So today I've got Wael and I've got David, and they're two astronomers, and you work for ATA and you work for HERA. So tell us all about that and just introduce yourselves. And tell everyone why astronomy is the coolest thing, because you sold it to me.
Sure. I'll start.
I think you start.
Okay. Cool.
Wael, start.
My formal title is the project scientist for the Allen Telescope Array. The Allen Telescope Array is a radio telescope. It's a interferometer, which means it's a combination of small telescopes that are, collectively they operate as one single telescope. This telescope is hosted on the Hat Creek Radio Observatory, which is 5 hours north of the Bay Area, north of San Francisco. And the observatory is operated and owned by the SETI Institute, and SETI stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The ATA, or the Allen Telescope Array, is the world's first and probably only radio telescope built from the ground up for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And we are currently under a upgrade of the instrument. We've been doing that for the last couple of years now. And I'm glad to share this more with you. And
I'm Dave. I'm actually at the University of California at Berkeley. Back when I moved to California, I had the joy of being the project manager to build the Allen Telescope Array. And so I got away from it a bit, and now I'm back and serving as kind of a coordination for the activities up at Hat Creek, because the Hat Creek Radio Observatory hosts a few more things than but the Allen Telescope Array. And so we're trying to host those in, but really the focus is on finding ET. That's what the telescope was built for. That's what we make sure we do on a pretty continual basis. And so we're hoping if he calls, we're ready to receive that call.
So cool. Phone home. Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, before I met you, I didn't even know that there were astronomers doing this, trying to find extraterrestrial life. First of all, set the scene. What does SETI do? How did it come about? For someone who knows nothing about the search for extraterrestrial life, how does it work? And how do radio telescopes even help us do that?
Well, so people have been thinking about, civilizations off the planet for a long time. In fact, I think someone got burned at the stake in the Middle Ages for talking about that and thinking about it. And even, over 100 years ago, people were thinking about how we could signal people on Mars because, they thought people might live on Mars. So we've learned a lot about the universe. We know that it probably doesn't have life on Mars. But we now have technology that can actually see extended distances into our galaxy and the universe. And so in about the late 50s, early 60s, some very smart scientists and researchers thought about this. A famous paper was written about then that said, look, we have technology that can receive, radio communications were new then. And it's like, we can receive radio communications from distant stars, and we should start looking at a particular range of frequencies to start off. And then one of the guys that we worked with was kind of our progenitor at the SETI Institute, Frank Drake, independently essentially started to do that very thing at one of the very first radio telescopes in the US. So from the very start, radio astronomers and radio astronomy has been done in the US. Now, by a very, very, very small number of people, though. And it really kind of kept going that way, where increasingly better telescopes and systems were used, but still it's a small number. And now in the last couple of years, through a program at the SETI Institute, but also something called Breakthrough Listen program, which injected a lot of money into this technological search. And so we use now telescopes all over the world, looking with the most sensitive receivers for very precise signals that might look like our communications, but coming from very distant very distant stars around it. So, and that's at the Allen Telescope Array, we essentially do that full time.
So at the Allen Telescope Array, you basically it's like the first of its kind, built from the ground up. First of all, what are the key challenges to doing that? Like, how do you even build a telescope of this kind of scale and size to be able to?
Well,
how do you do that?
Well, we probably need maybe 5 hours to go through.
Tell me your PhD thesis right now.
If you just want to scratch the surface of how we do this, but there are a few different components to that. The actual metal design of what the telescope. First of all, the design of the telescope itself, right? You can radio astronomy in general. You can do it's kind of two paradigms, right? You can either build bigger and bigger and bigger telescopes, a single dish telescope like the Green Bank telescope, like the Jodrell Bank telescope, and basically the bigger the telescope is, the more collecting area you have and the more sensitivity you have. But then you start running into issues, practical issues from the point of view of metal structure. It gets harder for the telescope to actually sustain itself, structurally, and so. Here we are. That's the Allen Telescope Array.
The magic of the internet.
Magic of the internet. So big telescopes usually gets harder and harder to build and maintain from that perspective. So the second paradigm to do radio astronomy is basically splitting that big telescope into smaller dishes, as we see here with the Allen Telescope Array, and then offload some of that work in terms of how we combine the telescopes together into a signal processing center or a bunch of computers that do really fancy math and computation to get all the telescopes sort of combined together. So that's the first thing we do, basically designing the telescope, thinking about what we want from what kind of science we want to do with the telescope, and then deciding whether we want a single dish or an interferometer. The interferometer in general means that the distance between the telescopes can be made really far away, which makes it easier for us to locate where a particular signal is coming from. Okay. It's basically how our eyes work. It's like in one
triangulation, right?
Yeah, that's why your eyes are separated. This gives you a kind of a parallax effect.
Exactly, and the more separation you have with your telescope, the better localization or triangulation you can achieve. And so the Allen Telescope Array was built in such a way because we want localization, and that's why we decided to go in the route of building an interferometer. And then we get into the part where, all right, we have a design. Now we have to, think about what sort of sensors we put in these telescopes, right? What frequency ranges we want to detect. The Allen Telescope Array is a unique instrument from many perspectives, but one of the one of the most unique, I guess, or special things about the telescope is that the sensors, or what we call the feeds, are sensitive to a frequency range between 1 and 12 gigahertz instantaneously. And this makes the telescope fairly unique in that field. And then on top of that, we had computation, we had servers, we had how we digitize the signal, so on and so forth. It's a whole new world. It's a whole big world.
We can operate it from right here. We should probably have Wael do SETI live on the air.
No, can you actually?
Yeah, it's all just controlled over the internet, basically.
So that's why when you were saying you were using other, like going away from ATA and other telescopes, you're basically controlling from one point around the world and using that same idea where you've got the distance between them is huge because they're like telescopes nowhere near each other. So you can then pinpoint where they're coming from better, but they're not geographically in the same place.
We mostly use those distant telescopes by themselves just because, they provide a very powerful, what we call pseudo interferometer, where you can, interference here isn't going to be the same as all the way in England or Australia. So that's a very powerful motivator. But the thing that the signal detection algorithms that we use are very, very computationally intensive. So we basically have to put a little supercomputer at every installation. So, for instance, at the Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia, or the Meerkat Telescope in South Africa, we have basically supercomputers there that do the research, or that do the signal processing, and then it sends back kind of condensed data that then we maybe look a little more closely at. But generally, the computer looks at most of the stuff and kind of rules out most things. In fact, in the Breakthrough Listen programs, 6 years of observing, we've only had one signal that rose above all those thresholds to humans, essentially. And we spent 3 very excited months trying to figure out if that was ET calling us or something else. The heat was put on because it got leaked to The Guardian. So The Guardian put out a story well before we were ready to comment on the detection. And so we spent a very excited and harried 3 months to show it wasn't ET. We don't know exactly what it was, probably actually some military activities near the telescope in Australia. But it was a good test run through all of the processes. But the computer is pretty smart because we know a lot of what the universe can put out by itself without humans. What stars and pulsars and things called fast radio bursts and all sorts of things put out. And we know that just physics tells that they have some limited limitations. So they can't put out signals that look like our communication signals very well. So that's what we look at. And then we can also look at how those vary in time to see, well, if it's near the Earth, it's going to vary in time probably more rapidly. If it's at a distant star, it's going to only vary in time kind of on the scales that the stars that essentially we move around the sun. So we look for that very specific, or rotate on our axis. So we look for those very specific signals. And like I said, the computer's pretty good because we get millions and millions and millions of detections every second. And the computer handles all of them except the very few that the computer says, that one's a real CPU scratcher. Let me send it to the humans, to the wet computers.
That's so cool. But we have to ask, okay, apart from that, not ET, kind of Guardian story, how close have you got? What have you heard? Has there been anything that's come through that we're like, oh, this is so close? What are your predictions? Are we going to hear something soon? This is exciting.
So in technical, you can think about the problem from a scientific. Obviously, it's a scientific endeavor and a scientific perspective, and you can put how much we have searched, right? In the region that we have searched in this complicated parameter, what we call the parameter space, right? 1 dimension would be, or 2 dimensions would be, what part of the sky we're looking at. A 3rd dimension would be frequency. A 4th dimension would be polarization of light. A 5th dimension is modulation. There are so many different sort of ways we can look at the universe, look for AT, and really we haven't really done a tremendous amount of work in that, and we're trying to to change that, it's a fairly hard endeavor to take on, right? Because we are looking for something that, one, we've never seen before, and two, we have so many assumptions about how we communicate, right? Humans, and so we have our own biases introduced, but also the search space is incredibly large. And so back to your question, how close are we?
Yeah.
I mean, we're closer than how we were yesterday, which is closer than how we were the day before, but like how close to the
which is massively closer than we were 6 years ago, where there was a real uptick. But I would say every SETI researcher is confident it will happen in their career and lifetime.
And are you
confident
that we're going to hear from ET and we're going to be able to like scan enough to hear back, and I guess over time get enough information about what is a baseline of out there and here, and what would be like not noise and actually communication?
Right. And we want to prepare ourselves for the future. One of the things that humanity is looking at is putting a telescope on the far side of the moon, which gets away from, at least now, all of the pesky transmissions that us humans do with our phones and our Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff is kind of, could be confusing to us because these are signals nature can't produce. So if we go to the far side of the moon in a future observatory, it might take that, right? It might take us putting a big observatory on the far side of the moon to get away from most of the Earth's transmissions. But there's a lot of groundwork to set. And again, I think we feel comfortable that in our lifetimes, maybe more his career, that we'll find a signal that we can't point to and say, oh, look, this we've ruled out. Now, can we rule it in as ET? It's kind of like the same as the UFO or the UAP phenomena, where most things you can say, well, that was swamp gas or Venus. But there are going to be a few that are like, well, we don't have an explanation for it. But in one explanation out of many is that it's an extraterrestrial signal. If we find a signal that repeats or persists, we can almost definitively show that it's an extraterrestrial technology. But if we just see something that flashes in and we never see again, we can go a long way to showing it's not something humans did, but it'll be difficult to prove that it's something that an extraterrestrial technology on a distant planet did. But that's why we keep trying and keep working at it using incredibly more sophisticated computers, right? With new computers and maybe quantum computing, you can do vastly more searches rather than searches that look for narrowband things or things narrow in time. Can actually search and say, that's Gaussian noise or not Gaussian noise. And the universe generally has Gaussian noise. It sounds almost like a rude statement. The universe is just Gaussian noise.
You calling the universe party? Are you calling the universe?
Yeah, we're just a big Gaussian noise event.
But that's really interesting that you think technology is going to play a good part in that quantum computing. So if you're like forecasting the future of your industry and you're talking about going to the far side of the moon, I mean, that's going to take some brand new technologies that probably you don't even use now, right? What happens there?
Well,
how do you even go to the far side of the moon?
We are actually planning our very first small telescope on the far side of the moon. So we're down a design path that we're hoping in a few years we actually are launching a small telescope, not a big observatory scale telescope, but a small telescope
to
the far side of the moon in a few years. I actually just, right before coming here, I was just in Florida at the very first launch from the US to put a lander on the moon. And it's a company I've been talking with. And the rocket, which was the very first Vulcan launch of all time, went very smoothly. But unfortunately, the lunar lander had some issues. So that one probably won't make it to the moon. But in a month, another one's going to launch that I'm going to also go to. And in February, let's hope that the U.S. puts the first platform on the moon that could handle our telescope. So we're really getting quite close to having the technology to put.
Oh my God. I can't believe you.
And we want to get there before
You're designing this right now. Like this is actually happening.
Yeah, we're down the path, and again, we're hoping to launch in 4 years and get it to the moon before all these other activities get to the moon, because we want to get there before there's mining on the south pole of the moon or all the other activities.
Then you'll have too much noise, and it will basically back to square one, won't it?
Well, it won't be nearly as bad on Earth, but.
No, are you sure? 4 years time. I mean, we could have a shopping mall like that.
Maybe you'll be the first mayor of the moon,
or
governor of the moon.
Oh, don't tempt me. I would be so That's too exciting. I so want to dabble into the technology and also like the challenges of putting the signals together on the separate arrays. But but I have to ask you the questions about even how you go about becoming an astronomer. Like I'm sure there are going to be people watching this later and go like, they have the coolest job. They're literally searching for extraterrestrial life, which is kind of like your fantasy book novel job. So how do you actually get to do the cool things that you both get to do? Like David, why are you like this is crazy. How did you go about becoming astronomers and doing this really cool job?
Yeah, that's a very good question for for people listening in and are interested in this path. Astronomy is an extremely multidisciplinary field. Astronomy has there's an interconnection of computing and engineering, be it structural or electrical or computer engineering. Physics and math and astrophysics, all of everything sort of comes together into this one field that we just called astronomy. And so I'm saying that to mean that you can get into astronomy through any of these paths. Yeah. You can start your career as an electrical engineer. And then move into instrumentation of telescopes, and then build telescopes, and then decide, well, now I have a telescope I need to use, and then learn about the science and how you actually utilize it to perform, astronomy science. Yeah. My personal path, I went through a physics degree, so I got a bachelor's in physics, moved into a master's in physics, master's in astrophysics. And then I wasn't studying I wasn't studying radio astronomy. I was doing stellar, atmospheres, and I was studying the atmospheres of stars. And then I decided to do a Ph.D. in radio astronomy, which back in when I started, it was super exciting because I was studying these fast radio bursts, and at that point we didn't really know what they are, and we still don't know what they are really. But it was an interesting field and a really exciting field to dab into. And so I got my degree, my PhD degree in radio astronomy, studying fast radio bursts. And then I was always interested in the search for ET. I did not get to do that during my PhD, but then the transfer of skills, I guess, from doing radio astronomy, looking for fast radio bursts, applies exactly to radio astronomy about looking for ET. It's the same instrumentation, the same algorithm design. You only have to tweak a little things here and there, but it's basically the same kind of search. And so and now this is what I'm doing here at the SETI Institute, both personally and also helping other people to do that and other kind of science really on the telescope. So that's at least my path. Dave might have
slightly different. My undergrad actually is in astronomy and astrophysics, but then I started grad school in astronomy. But I actually went the opposite way, where I was like, well, it's kind of cool to know the astrophysics, but I like, how does the actual receiver work? So I actually went back, and my PhD is in electrical and computer engineering, and then I actually was a faculty member of electrical computer engineering, and then I really kind of wanted to take that knowledge and kind of get back, and so I left my professor job to go to build the Allen Telescope Array about 25 years ago or so. Now I started that, and then I've been kind of doing the radio astronomy technology and building big telescopes. I'm currently building a big telescope in South Africa, also for a different scientific purpose. So I kind of came in from one of these other paths. Although my PhD was in remote sensing and atmospheric planetary astronomy, so it was not quite a pure electrical and computer engineering degree. And we're hoping that the SETI research will take the same path. So for instance, for planets, we knew of the 9, then 8 planets in our solar system, and then we detected the first extrasolar planets. The first one was actually detected by a radio astronomer, to put in a small plug. And now there are thousands and thousands and thousands of planets known all over the galaxy. And same with the fast radio bursts. When Wael started his degree, there were very few fast radio bursts detected.
And we didn't know that were real.
We didn't even know that they were real things. Yeah. And it was the first time where we could see that the universe is very dynamic, right? It's not stars that shine for billions of years. There are explosions all over the place. And now we know of thousands of fast radio bursts, and it's becoming a real field of science. So it's that first one can be very difficult, and you need to use some technology, you don't even quite know how it's going to work or do it. You find the first one and you know what to do, sort of, and then you typically find many. So I suspect that will be the same with SETI and technology, is that, you know, we'll find the first one or a few, and then we'll build a telescope that can find many, assuming and hoping that there are many technological civilizations out there, of course.
But will that mean that brand new science, brand new application of science, things that you maybe not studied yet? Because like your paths are really interesting. I mean, first of all, Wael, you start almost narrow, then broad, and like you start broad, then narrow into actually going into the field of astrophysics and astronomy, and you started the other way, then going broad into electrical engineering. But as you, I guess, find extraterrestrial life, and maybe you have to refine your technology, what will that mean in terms of like the future of your careers? Like, does that mean that you guys have to go and adapt? Like, if you're saying it to someone who's brand new today, what would you think they need to do? Where do you think that field is going in terms of background and expertise?
That'd be great if we knew that. So,
give us the hack.
Typically the way discovery works, right, you can only do what you know how to do now, right? You can postulate that we'll build some amazing future thing that will discover a particle that we don't even understand today, but we don't know how to do that. So you build what you know how to build now to the best of your ability, and then try to give it as much capability as you can, and then you look at it. So you're going to look at what you built it for, but you're also going to look at it in many different ways. And so it's this process of discovery where you build a telescope for something probably specific and you do a very good job, but then you look at the data in a different way, and that sets you down a whole different path. I think that's probably the way it will go. And then, you know, ultimately maybe we find enough of a signal that tells us, well, if you look on this other phenomena, this is where we're really talking. If you go over there, you'll really see what we're talking about.
Yeah. And Dave brings up a really important topic in general in astronomy. Most of the really big discoveries in astronomy were done, quote unquote, by mistake. You know, I mentioned fast radio bursts. Fast radio bursts were never thought existed. You know, from a energy and from a sort of what we understood about the universe at that point. You know, at the time, we could not predict something that can create what we call a fast radio burst now. So we never searched for them. What we ended up doing, by mistake, we tweaked, or one of the researchers doing another kind of science, tweaked their search software in such a way that they were like, okay, maybe I'll search for something in this part of the space here. And then this just exploded into this whole new field. And so this happens a lot in astronomy, and yeah, we have to always keep an open mind to such things.
It's funny that first sorry, go.
No, but how do you maintain the open mind? Because you were saying fast radio pulses, they were like within your educational journey that came about. So how do you even like maintain that open, receptive mind to not just one fixed way of accepting science and adapting to brand new research and hypothesis? Like, what's a key thing you'd say for a young scientist who's like, oh, I want to do this, but this is what I know, and I only know what I know, and they've maybe got a fixed mindset? What'd be the advice there?
Well, personally, this scientific discovery is such a driver for me, and I'm assuming people who want to go into astronomy and into science in general, they would have that, right? Like, to me, the rushed feeling of seeing something that no one else in the world has seen is such an amazing experience, and I crave that. And so to me, this is my driver, and I'm assuming that people who are listening to us now, who are interested in, or who have this drive, should be encouraged very much to go into science, because this is how the field is. Now, there are so many other things included in a typical science position or science researcher position. It's not always the green, everyone's happy and everything's going great, just like any other field really. But there's always this light at the end of the tunnel, and there might be a discovery at some point that would.
And I think for young astronomers that really have an idea of sense of what they want to do, there are opportunities out there. And I think one of the great things about the SETI Institute in the Breakthrough Listening program is we really are trying to get the youngsters, like many of our papers, and we put out a lot of papers, a lot of them are written by undergraduates that we come in and we have this telescope, the Allen telescope, where they can come in and use a telescope as an undergraduate and really get their fingers dirty and probably break a few things that they have to fix or we have to fix. So that's unique because most of the other telescopes are amazing, huge machines, and you've got, the NSF and the NRAO, these big organizations, and they can't quite let such speculative things, although they are very open. And so a young astronomer that knows what they want to do or has an idea, there are opportunities that exist out there. There are a few old people that, once someone has had a successful career, say, okay, now I've done this and I want to kind of go back and really enable some of these new technologies. And so there are a few of those, and that is a huge enabler, but really it's the young people kind of driving that science. And as a telescope builder, kind of predominantly in my career, there's always got to be what I call the PETA. The PETA is the pain in the ass astronomer that just wants a telescope to do impossible things now. And you try to accommodate as best you can. So every good program needs a PETA, the pain in the ass astronomer. That really is just kind of drive. Just make the thing work.
You can do more.
To do this thing.
I want more capability out of it now.
Exactly.
But that's wild, because you've had a very long career, David. Like, from your very first telescope to, I guess, more recent ones, what do you think has been the biggest achievement in the capabilities that you've been able to achieve in industry?
Well, I think a lot of it is the computational side of things. So, for radio astronomy, we leverage all of the amazing Moore's Law, Silicon Valley technology, as well as, all of our handsets have these have amazing little receivers and processors in them. So we leverage that, but we have to kind of do it in a new and different way, right? It doesn't quite work out of the box. But the ability to search huge swaths of data for very fine little signals has grown by factors of billions and billions, right? The first thing that I talked about looked at like one channel for a while, and they just looked at it, and then it looked at another channel for a while. Whereas for every second, we are looking for millions or hundreds of millions of channels at one time. And you just keep doing that. And really, it's just building upon that time of just looking out and being able to process those signals that I think is going to give us the signal that we're looking for. It's just time on the sky, looking through as much data, as many haystacks as we possibly can.
So,
yeah, and
what's yours? What's yours, Wael? What's yours?
Well, I was about to give the example of the Allen telescope array. This instrument hasn't Moore's Law hasn't really kept up with how much capabilities we can extract out of the telescope, and I'm predicting that maybe in the next 10 years we might be able to maybe fully utilize it the way it should be utilized, or the way it's capable of delivering. This all depends on more computation, better digitizers, better compute infrastructure, software, and so on and so forth. And so there's always we have to always keep up with new technologies being deployed. I mean, I can tell something. I work very closely with colleagues of mine in NVIDIA. The NVIDIA, the giant out there.
Every little thing has an NVIDIA processor in it.
NVIDIA processor, so we're testing some of their newest hardware to figure out whether we can use that in our own research and engineering endeavors. So we have to always
processing power. Is that it? To help.
Better processing, faster processing, more efficient way to do things, right? We have to make sure that we're not,
adding to the climate change problem.
Yeah. Making sure everything.
I wouldn't have thought about that. Wait, how could we not have thought about that? How does that relate? Because we're looking to the stars for extraterrestrial life or extraterrestrial communication, of course. But how does that relate?
Well, that's a great distinction you made there too. Well, it is true that the signals from space aren't adding to climate change, but with all the data centers, and of course radio astronomy is a teeny tiny drop in the bucket, but all those data centers are huge users of energy and huge emitters of carbon. So whereas they don't necessarily have to be, And so, one of the things that we've always tried to do is be as efficient as we possibly can, not because it will save the planet, but because maybe we can develop future or better technologies or help get people familiar with different technologies. For instance, throughout my entire career, actually, one of the hallmarks of a telescope that I built, we always have some aspect of a weird and novel way to cool the antennas. So like the Allen Telescope Array we pipe air underground. We just have a big blower that blows air underground instead of having air conditioners and fans. I will say it doesn't always work on a hot summer day, and sometimes they're not very happy with that technique. And in Australia, I did the same thing. And in South Africa, my big telescope in Australia does the same thing. For the Allen Telescope Array, we're looking at novel ways to cool the computers that I think hopefully in the future data centers will use, because cooling the computer takes almost as much energy as the computer used to process it. And there are ways that you can dramatically reduce that.
So that's actually a big energy emitter. So that's why that bit's got to get as super efficient as possible.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And I think they more creative, and we have the scope to be more creative, and hopefully, get that out there and in our humble way. But that's the real, and of course, sustainable. If you make the energy without producing carbon, then it doesn't sort of matter in some sense. But you can always try to do better in every aspect.
And then do you share like the lessons learned? So for example, let's say you make a massive stride and you find a better way of doing something that's efficient, more sustainable. Do you share it across your wider industry, or is there more competition between my telescope, my technology? Good luck to you, sir. That kind of thing. I don't know. Is that right? Do you share?
Competition can be healthy for the most part, but that's not really the driver at the Breakthrough Listen at the SETI Institute. We do not really do that, in the sense that we try as much as possible to share the data that we record. We share the techniques we use, and we share any hardware that we end up building and designing.
And the software. You can go online and download all the software yourself. Of course, you need a really big computer to run it efficiently.
Yeah.
Okay. So the average Joe can't just download it and start
You'd be surprised what the average Joe or Josephine can do with their basement. Because the processing is the point. They can, you can download a significant amount of data on your computer, just on your little laptop, and find the signal from the Voyager spacecraft that we have out there that use the techniques, the most distant human object ever sent into space that we can still detect. So, start off with that, and then, the amateur radio astronomer and optical astronomer has a huge place that they can play in this.
I think you just set the audience homework. You've got a question in the chat, so I should probably ask this because it sounds interesting. It says, what key underlying technology is driving the increased telescopic capacity, and is this driven by increased semiconductor capacity / processing? Very good question.
Yeah.
Now, over to you.
I think it almost answers itself.
Yeah, pretty much. When we talk about semiconductors in general, the way I see it is from at least two different perspectives. This semiconductor technology can allow us to build more efficient and better digitizers, right? Radio telescopes are basically, I like to say, they're like really complicated voltmeters, right? They sense a really small voltage, and then that voltage has to be digitized, right?
Shoved into a computer, basically.
Shoved into a computer.
Yeah.
But the better digitizers we have, the more access to frequency range, the more access to light wavelengths we can have. So semiconductor technology, or better technology in semiconductors, can help us build better digitizers. But also, once the digital signal is already in a computer, better semiconductor technology can help us build better processors, better and faster and quicker and more efficient processors that can process the data more quickly, which means that we can do we can do more of this processing. But also, there's software upgrades, or software, writing better software, including, dabbing into the world of artificial intelligence, AI. We can really do more interesting things, or we can let computers artificial intelligence searching for intelligence. But yeah, I guess yeah, if you want to add something to that question, that's a really good question.
And I would say another important development that's sort of on a parallel line is one of the things we're doing is something called commensal observing, right? So we have our dedicated telescope, and we look and we point the telescope and we do exactly what we want. We also have time on other telescopes where we point the telescope and we do what we want and where we want to point it and so on. But the telescopes are used all the time for radio astronomers, for other research. So what we've done at many of the biggest radio telescopes in the world is we just use the telescope all the time. So whatever someone else is looking at whatever frequency, we just suck that into our computers. And so we are using the largest radio telescopes on the planet all the time for SETI. Some of the times we get to point it and tell it what frequency. And really a goal is every telescope and every optical telescope, we've kind of focused on radio, but this technology might well be optical optical signal that we receive. So every radio telescope.
So it's not just radio. You don't think that extraterrestrial communication will just be radio? I just happen to you that's what your initial focus has been.
Right. Oh. And we're looking at optical. Okay. And one of the interesting signals you can see optically is another. So we talked about Breakthrough Listen, the program that we've been given basically $100 million in 10 years to really reinvigorate the field, which is happening quite nicely. Another more speculative thing that's being funded is something called Breakthrough Starshot, where they're trying to now design a little satellite that goes on a light sail to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri. So there's a program now being developed. Can we develop the technology to send a small probe to the nearest star, which is a star called Alpha Proxima, and which we think there's a planet around, and cruise there? And the technique they're using is you build something called a light sail. What
is that?
Well, it's not been. We know it's possible. We know it happens. But to build an efficient light sail, you want basically material that you can blast with a gigawatt laser and will survive. And that if you blast it with a gigawatt laser for about a minute, it will be propelled to about a quarter of the speed of light. So, but these are incredibly bright lasers that are just would shoot out, and you do it all the time, right? You send thousands of these. So one of the things we'd look for in optical is there another civilization somewhere out in our galaxy? Are they sending little probes, and are they accelerating them with gigawatt lasers? And that actually isn't necessarily that hard to find. Any backyard astronomer with a fast enough CCD camera, which you can buy, could maybe detect these gigawatt lasers that are maybe propelling light sails to probe for ET, sending probes to nearby planets to them. So, there's a lot of scope. We just don't know. Oh my God.
You're blowing my mind right now. This is incredible. This is so exciting. I think I'm gonna I want to get this. I want to start. Okay, let's give me a new side hobby. You know what you say? You needed all these skills. I mean, you said electrical engineering, and I'm a civil engineer. It's not quite the same, but it's such an interdisciplinary role. Like your software, you got everything, and you've got to tell me.
Engineering. Our telescopes are civil engineering works, right? Basically, there you go. So I think the lunar telescope's got a lot of civil engineering.
No. Don't tempt me. I'm so tempted already. You have no idea. But I'm really excited because you also just dropped in casually the use of AI in this. Yes. In fact, I have to quote you, Wael. You said the artificial intelligence choosing intelligence. That's a line. That's got to be a line. But how does that work? And first of all, how do you validate and verify that? Do you just leave AI to work? What are the caveats on that? Should we be scared?
Yeah, maybe.
So it's a process. I would have to say. We obviously have biases, right? If you're asking a computer to do something for you, you are introducing your own biases in that algorithm that you're trying to develop, and algorithm that you're trying to construct. And in many scenarios, you can ask the artificial intelligence to tell you to search for things that you haven't yet seen in your data. So one way we do this is we present the computer with set of examples with examples that we do not want to see in our data set. That works. But also other ways we can ask artificial intelligence to help us is to ask it to present us with anything that does not look like the data that we presented it to start with. So it's basically searching for something that we haven't seen, or searching for something that the algorithm itself hasn't yet seen.
We call that the broader field is really anomaly detection. Detect anomalies, things that you can't quite explain or don't quite look the way other things you might expect look. It's kind of a very fuzzy description, but that's because it's kind of what is an anomaly?
So you
Well, something that's anomalous.
Data sets that you have, and you ask it to find data sets that you haven't given it.
Yeah, what doesn't look like that? Here's a lot of stuff we think we don't.
So you're teaching it to find the thing that you haven't trained it in,
right?
Or you haven't.
Yeah.
And then please tell us when you find something. We want them to tell us when they find something too. So.
And tell us about it. And then how do you have you had any cool bits come back from that process already, or is that just something new?
It's well, so far we haven't found anything exciting in a way that I would raise the flag and say, hey, look at me, I've done it. But it's whatever we learn from AI usually always back into the design and the artifacts that we generate, say around around the site. As we already mentioned, radio telescopes are very sensitive voltmeters. They're sensitive detectors of radio waves, and we are just simply surrounded by just plethora of devices that just emit radio waves. And so the more we understand this environment, the better. And AI is already helping out with a lot of that. So most of the results that we get out of the AI system that we deploy on our on our telescopes and our detectors always feed back into the environment, the radio frequency environment around the site, or the radio frequency environment, in space.
Satellites are a huge problem for us.
And so that's how we understand more what not to look for, if that makes sense.
So it's finding you information to exclude from your data set.
That's one way. Yeah.
So basically,
exactly.
Is it identifying the more noise and interference? Is it basically helping you screen that out better?
Well, AI is finding, back to the anomaly. AI is finding anomalies for us, right? We just look at anomalies, but we have trained eyes basically that look at it and look at this data and say, well, we do know that this data is satellites. These are new kinds of satellites, or for some reason our telescope picked them up, or
they were in a different part of the sky and they had a weird signature that we weren't expecting because they just happened to be one part of the sky doing one particular thing.
So that was something you've not seen before, but isn't quite what we're looking for. But here you are, here's the data, screened out as an anomaly, but not the anomaly you're looking for.
Yeah.
Oh,
these are not the droids you're looking for, right?
And the best case scenario is that it detects ET, and we look at it and we're like, wait a second, this is actually really interesting.
Done it.
Yeah,
I'm really excited. The day you do, I feel like I should get a message straight away. Like, God.
We'll come back to this podcast.
Absolutely.
If we can,
Absolutely, we have to. But one of the themes of this series is each guest gives me 3 wisdoms that they've gained on their amazing career journey and their amazing lives. So I'm going to start with you, Wael, because we started with you earlier. What are the 3 wisdoms you've gained so far in this journey?
3 wisdoms I've gained in this journey. One is always listen to and when we're as scientists in general, we learn how to bring information together, and this is based on really listening. Both listening using our ears, but also reading through articles that have been published, and so always listen to what another person has to tell you. And I feel this actually affected me as on a daily basis. Just having the ability to listen to other people and listen to other points of views. Let's see. I guess number 2 would be keeping an open mind, not to be limited to any certain maybe belief system or any or at least, scientific view. Belief system is basically a wide thing. I probably wouldn't go too deep in that, but keeping an open mind about any scientific sort of endeavor. And I don't know, number 3 is just, keep going, keep doing what you like to do. Just forge ahead and just, yeah, I don't know. I hope.
Listen, which I think everyone, even if you weren't an astronomer, should listen. Useful and open-mindedness. So not being of any particular school of thought, just seeing everything and doing the things you love and forging ahead. That's pretty good. Those are just sick wisdoms. David, now what are your 3 wisdoms?
Yeah, tough act to follow. I think
he smashed it. He did like one.
it spheres, and that
He had ready.
this comes from some advice given to you a long time ago, and it I think is very important broadly. Is really conflict arises from misaligned assumptions or expectations, right? So, and if we don't provide any expectations, then unintentionally someone is going to get expectations that we may not succeed. So I think it's important to set appropriate expectations. That it just helps in life. For instance, if you tell someone you're going to get there at 11 and you're there at 11:01, well, their expectation, they're not upset. If you tell them you're going to get there at 9 and you get there at 11, they're upset because the expectations are misaligned. So being very purposeful in what you tell people you're going to do and the expectations they may have can really minimize the amount of conflict that you experience. I will say in building radio telescopes, we almost always give very inflated expectations because we're obviously optimists and you plan as if everything is going to go perfectly, and of course it doesn't. But still, it's important to try to intentionally convey realistic explanations. So that's one thing that that was advice given to me, and the example of, if you tell your wife you're going to be home for dinner and you're 2 hours late, she's going to be upset. Whereas if it was a good advice I've tried to always adhere to.
Spirit of life, I think.
I think another one that I think is really, we should just cut people slack. And I don't know if that translates to UK jargon, but generally at any given time, people are doing the best that they can. And so we kind of go in with an expectation of, let's cut them some slack. Let's try to see their perspective, where they're coming from, and not. Now, of course, sometimes people don't always deserve that, and you can maybe change your mind. But people really are doing the best that they can. Let's cut them some slack. Let's try to be kind, not just judge them or get upset or angry. So I guess that sort of goes along there. And then my third one is a bit of a pet peeve of mine, is people having knee-jerk reactions or programmatic responses without thinking about it or having come to some sort of considered opinion. Everyone has a belief system and they come at it that way, but we don't have to let it define our decision. And we should always keep in mind that, well, I'm not going to be able to make the perfect decision. I'm not always going to have the best information, but let me at least try to critically think before I kind of charge ahead. So avoiding those programmed or knee-jerk reactions, and try to give the appropriate amount of critical thought into your actions.
Those are good. Listen, think open, and just think all the views and consider everything, and not be stuck in one belief system. Forge ahead. Expectations, set them or manage them, and that's just really good. But also still being kind to other people, giving people the benefit of the doubt, or the slack, as you would say. That's fantastic.
Including yourself when you fail to adhere to these things, right? Because you're not always going to
give
do
yourself
it
the benefit of the doubt. I tried my best.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, David and Wael. This has been the most incredible conversation. I've been so excited since we met on the flight, to do this. So thank you so much for literally just joining me and sharing your wisdoms with me on Wednesday Wisdom. This has been such a delight. And the minute you find extraterrestrial communication, coming back, you said it on, it's going to be recorded and shared on YouTube and Spotify. So you promised. So you'll come back and tell us all about it. But thank you so much. It's been so wonderful.
Well, thank you. And have a great year.
Thank you. And enjoy the rest of your conference.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for now. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Before you take that off, let me take a picture of our
take a picture. Yeah.
We'll send you our setup.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. This has been so much fun. I've been so hyper. I've been so excited. Bye, guys. Look at us. Oh, send me a picture. I want to see it. I love the fact. Is that balanced on a can?
Well, we had a better setup with the laptop. We had to kind of improvise at the last minute.
That's what scientists and engineers do.
Absolutely.
Just to improvise.
It's a very disinfected setup.
Well, you know, sanitize, keeping healthy. I'm not judging. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
And bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.